Welcome, quilters. I'm so excited to be here with you today for our class. I want to start by giving you a little background on myself. I'm Pam Heller, AccuQuilt's cutting expert. While I've been a part of the AccuQuilt team for over 9 years, I've actually been an avid quilter for more than 2 decades. I love the ease and speed of making quilt designs using the AccuQuilt system. Bright colors and modern blocks are my favorite, though I have been known to spend months quilting traditional and classic patterns. During my time at AccuQuilt, I've been able to teach a variety of classes, provide motivation and inspiration to our customers, work directly with our AccuQuilt retailers, host weekly live events, and test and design dies and patterns. Some would say that I have a dream job, and I would definitely agree. Today's class is called Cut Time, Quilt More, and I'm going to introduce you to our Go fabric cutting systems. This class is perfect if you don't know much about AccuQuilt, or maybe you just got a cutter and haven't used it yet, or maybe you just want to understand it a little bit better before using it. You will all be AccuQuilt pros by the end of our class. So let's get started. Why AccuQuilt? Let me tell you, the better question is, why not? There are so many reasons why AccuQuilt is a game changer for quilters. Think about what some of your challenges as a quilter are that you face. First of all, the time it takes you to cut your fabric into pieces. The AccuQuilt system cuts 90% faster than with rotary cutters or scissors. How about the challenge of getting accurate cuts? The AccuQuilt system cuts accurately every single time. Fabric waste. Our dies have two-tone foam to show you where to place your fabric to help you to reduce waste. An ever-growing stash. AccuQuilt is a great stash busting tool to help you save money on fabric you already own. The cut versus finished size. AccuQuilt provides both, and it also builds in that 1/4-inch seam allowance on all of our geometric shapes, including our strip dies. Now that you know why about AccuQuilt, let's talk about how AccuQuilt works. The AccuQuilt Go system is a die cutting machine, and we'll get to our machine options here in just a minute. And how it works is how you have your machine of choice. Then you're going to take your Go die. So let's look at a Go die for just a minute. All right. First of all, this is our half square triangle die. So you can see the two-tone foam that I mentioned earlier to help you with the placement of fabric. Now you can notice I can run my hand along the edge of this die board and I'm not going to cut myself. That's because the steel blades are inside that foam to keep it safe for use. You will also notice that the shapes are at an angle on the die board. That's on purpose. It's very similar to if you go over a speed bump with both wheels forward, you get that jarring effect. But if you just take one wheel at a time, it's a smoother ride. And that's why the dies have all of the blades at an angle. So when you place your fabric on the die and then your cutting mat and run it through the cutter, just one corner at a time is going to go through your cutter, and it's going to be smooth and easy. All right, quilters, next you want to place your fabric on the die, making sure that the lengthwise grain is parallel to these blades. Now, here's how you know what your lengthwise grain is. We call it the pull test. So look at this. You're going to take this fabric and you're going to pull lots of stretch. Okay, it's going to have kind of this dull thud. But when we pull here, look, nice and tight, and you're going to get that high-pitched pull. All right? So this is the lengthwise grain. So if I were laying my fabric on this half square triangle die, I would have the lengthwise grain parallel to these lengthwise blades. Okay? And that pitch is high and tight. So a little mantra I use to help me remember is high and tight is right. Now, when you're using the AccuQuilt system, you can cut up to 6 layers of quilting cotton in just one pass through the cutter. So what I have here, I'm going to put on is 6 layers. All right, so to measure my fabric, I've measured my shape from here to here. I've added a 1/4 inch seam, and I've just rough cut width of fabric. I've also taken off my salvage edge. Now, if the salvage edge were here, you would know that this is that lengthwise grain. All right, so I'm going to fan fold my fabric. When we talk about fan folding, we talk about just going back and forth. Okay, now I'm going to take my appropriate size cutting mat. This is on a 6x6 die board, so I want to make sure that I have a 6x6 cutting mat. All right, now I want to talk a minute about cutting mats. AccuQuilt has 7 sizes of cutting mats: 5x10, 6x6, 6x12, 6x24, 10x24, 10x10, and if you own our Go Big electric fabric cutter, you can use a variety of Go Big dies, and you will need a 14x16 mat. Now, you only want to buy that 14x16 mat if you have that Go Big. If you have a cutter that has a handle, that mat and those dies will not fit through your Go cutter. You're going to get thousands of cuts out of your dies. What's going to wear out is your cutting mat. So what you want to do is flip your mat and turn it and flip and turn it to get all the good use out of it. When it stops cutting cleanly, or you can see light through your mat, it's time to replace it. All right? So I have my 6 layers of fabric with the lengthwise grain. I'm going to put my mat on top, and let's open up our cutter and see what's inside. So this is our Go fabric cutter. It is lightweight, portable, weighs about 15 pounds. All right, so I'm going to turn it, and I'm going to lay it flat, and I want to make sure that the handle is facing towards me. All right, with this machine, there is a steel roller inside, and that's going to push on the mat, pushing the fabric into the blades, all right, and it's going to cut perfectly. So watch, here we go. I'm going to turn the handle. Look how easy that is, okay? Now, static is built up as it's been in my cutter, so I'm going to give that mat a little bit of love and slide, don't lift. Look at this, quilters. I have cut perfect half square triangles, okay? So you're going to notice, quilters, with this particular shape, we've cut off the dog ears. So from this point here to this point here is a 1/4 inch seam allowance. The steel blades in this die never move, so they never wear out. You will get thousands of cuts out of the die. But remember, that mat's going to get hundreds of cuts, and that's what needs to be replaced. And that's how the system works. All right, quilters, so what are your options when trying to decide on which cutter or starter set for you? Well, let me show you. First of all, we have our Go Me fabric cutter starter set. This is our smallest and most lightweight cutter that we offer. It's perfect for brand new quilters. Maybe you're a crafter or a fiber artist, or maybe you're just a quilter on the go. What's included is your Go Me cutter and 2 dies, a 3-inch finished half square triangle die and a 3-inch finished 1/4 square triangle die, a 6x6 cutting mat, and a pattern book to get you started. Let's take a look at some of the samples made with just the 2 dies in our Go Me. The first is our Go Star Pop Throw Quilt. So look at this. These are just perfect 1/4 square triangles put together. And look, there's this pop of pink color in the middle. I really, really like this quilt. Next is the Dahlia Delight Throw Quilt. The thing about this quilt is that we've used half square triangles, and doesn't it look like a bright dahlia? Oh, I just think it's so pretty. So again, a variety of colors is going to change the way your quilt looks. And then last, we have the Prism Chev Table Runner. So this looks a little bit complicated, but actually it's not. Right here, this block has a half square triangle and 2 quarter square triangles. One is in gray and one is in color. So as you come here, same kind of block. Half square triangle, quarter square triangles. One in gray and one in color. This is a super fast weekend project. Next, we have our Ready, Set, Go, which is our ultimate fabric cutting system. This is our most popular starter set because it literally has everything you need to get started. Just add fabric. So what's included is our Go fabric cutter. Weighs about 15 pounds. We've also included our Go Cube 8-inch mix and match block, which I'll be breaking down for you here in just a few minutes. Our 2.5-inch strip die. This is essential, and I'll show you why shortly. A 10 by 24 cutting mat, and we've also included a die pick to help you keep your dies clean and ready to use. It also includes the Go Cube book by our good friend Eleanor Burns. This is a pattern book for projects and quilts using the cube system. Let's break down our cube for a minute. Now, I mentioned that our Ready, Set, Go includes a Go Cube mix and match block. For those of you who may not know what a cube is, I'm going to show you. Cubes were created because AccuQuilt has over 400 dies, and we wanted to simplify what a beginner would need. So cubes come in 6 different sizes. A 4-inch finished block, 6-inch finished block, 8, 9, 10, and 12-inch finished blocks. The 8-inch is our most popular size, so that's why we've included it in the Ready, Set, Go. A cube has 8 different geometric shapes inside that work together to make 72 mix and match blocks. Cubes are what I like to call our quilt by number system. So let's take a look at a cube. All right, so here's our 8-inch cube. We're going to open up our cube like this. Ta-da! All right, so inside there are 3 sections. So first of all, you should know that your cube comes in this perfect storage box. When I open up my cube, I'm going to pull the skinny one first. It will allow for the other sections to come out easily. Remember, quilters, you want to store your dies like books on a shelf, which is what happens here in the cube system. If you lay your dies flat and stack them one on top of each other, the weight of the dies on top will damage the blades of the dies on bottom. All right, so let's start with the first 4 shapes in every cube. Look at how pretty this is. All right, so first of all, quilters, you need to know that each die is numbered. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Each pocket is numbered. 1, 2, 3, 4. The others have 5, 6, 7, 8. Each pocket also has a diagram so you know which shape is inside. Now, the thing to remember is that the cube system is based on a 4-patch system, all right? So here's a sample of a 4-patch. Shape number 1 in every square, or every cube is a square, all right? So 4 of these sewn together, in this case, would make an 8-inch finished block. So if I was using my 4-inch cube, 4 of these squares sewn together would make a 4-inch finished block. The shapes in the cube are the same in every cube. They're just different sizes. Okay, so that's shape number 1. Now, shape number 2 in every cube are smaller squares. So right here, there's a blade in the center. So there are actually 4 shapes on this die board. Keep in mind, quilters, that sometimes dies in the cube have multiple shapes. All right? Now, next is my all-time favorite shape. These are half square triangles. All right? Remember, we've cut off the dog ears. So from this point here to this point here is a perfect 1/4-inch seam. Next are quarter square triangles. And the way that you're going to remember that is that shape number 4 is for quarter squares. So we have a blade here and here to cut our quarter square triangles. Now, before I show you the rest of the shapes, let me talk to you about the patterns. So this is kind of a quilt by number system. So if I wanted to make this die block, this block right here, I would need dies 2, 3, and 5. So for my cube, I would pull out shapes 2, 3, and 5. This tells me how many of each shape I need to cut, and this tells me the yardage I need to make one block. So why do we only tell you one block? Well, we don't know what you're making. Maybe you're making a table runner, or maybe you're making a mix and match quilt, okay? So you might have to do a little math to figure out how much yardage you need. Once I've cut my pieces, I'm going to turn my paper over, and look, these are the sewing instructions. This is so that you can put your blocks together and make sure your points come the way they're supposed to and your block finishes to the appropriate size. All right, so those are the first 4 shapes in your cube. Let's look at the next 4 shapes. All right, so now we have shapes 5, 6, 7, and 8. Remember, the shapes are the same in every cube, just different sizes. So shape number 5 in every single cube are smaller half square triangles. So there's big half square triangles and small half square triangles, big squares and little squares. Shape number 6 in every cube is not just a square, but it's a square on point. It is the center for the block square in a square. So the shape you're going to need on the outside of this to create that square in a square block is shape number 5. Next is shape number 7, and it's a parallelogram. Think of how difficult it would be, quilters, to cut a parallelogram with a rotary cutter and a ruler. We've made sure that we've done all the math for you, and the shape you need on either side to create a rectangle, shape number 5. And speaking of rectangles, shape number 8 in every cube is a rectangle. There are 2 on this die board. All right, so those are the shapes in every cube. All right, and the skinny one I pulled first has a cutting mat and a pattern book. All right, let's take a look at some samples made with our cube. So this is called our Bright Sampler. This is really fun. So it's just a sampler that we took all of the shapes from the 12-inch cube and made these nice big 12-inch blocks. So look right here, there's those parallelograms and shape number 5. This is kind of bear's paw. So we took shape number 1, shape number 5, that center square, shape number 2. Next, we use the 8-inch cube to create this super cute wall hanging called Pencil Me In. Isn't this so fun? So here's those rectangle shapes. Here's the rectangle shapes. And then we used our cute little half square triangles and squares to make this really fun wall hanging. Next, we also used our 8-inch cube to create the Colorado quilt. So look at how beautiful this is. I love the just deep, rich colors of this quilt. So here's that pinwheel block. So we've used shape number 5. And here's flying geese. Did you know there are flying geese in every cube? This is shape 4, and this is shape 5. All right, so those 8 shapes give you 72 mix and match patterns. But believe it or not, there are quilters who have made all of those 72 patterns and wanted more. So AccuQuilt has 2 companion sets. The first is corners, the next is angles. You can add to your mix and match cubes to expand your design library. So notice I said added. So these are not included in the Ready, Set, Go. Each companion set contains 4 additional dies, and each one adds 72 additional mix and match patterns. So if you have the cube in your Ready, Set, Go and add the 2 companions, you can now create over 216 mix and match block designs. There are so many design possibilities using your cube system. The key is companions have to be the same size. So if you have the 8-inch mix and match cube, you will need to have the 8-inch companions, angles, and corners. Now, quilters, we do a whole class on the cube system that goes through all of the shapes and how they work together. So be sure and check out the class, Mix and Match Magic with Go Cubes, if you want to learn more about cubes and companions. But here's a sneak peek at some of the samples you can make using our companion sets. So first, this is called Go Cube 12-inch Chisel Around quilt. All right, look at how pretty this is. So one of the shapes in the companion set corners is the chisel shape. And this is going to be shape number 5 from the original cube. So put together, it makes this just stunning little pinwheel pattern using chisels. And right here, these are shape number 2. Now we have the Go Pinwheel Kite Throw Quilt. This is such a bright quilt. Let's break it down by shape. So here is in the companion set angles. This is the kite shape and the kite shape sides, right? And then look right here, this is the trapezoid shape. I've never cut a trapezoid by hand. I never will. There's a die for that. The 2 shapes you need on the trapezoid to equal a square is shape number 5 and shape number 3. This is our pinwheel kite throw quilt. All right, next is one of my absolute favorite quilts. This is called Over and Above. We used our 8-inch cube and our companion set corners. The block that we created right here is called Signature Block, and that's found in the companion set corners. And look how bright and beautiful this is. The shape you need on that outside of that signature block to create a square is shape number 5. It's kind of our workhorse of the cube system. And these are just shape number 2. Isn't this darling? All right. Next in our Ready, Set, Go is our 2.5-inch strip die. Now, strip dies are our most versatile go dies, and I'm going to show you why. AccuQuilt has a variety of different sizes available in our strip dies. But why do you think we went to the 2.5-inch strip die? What do you use 2.5-inch strips for? Yeah, everything, right? Borders, binding, sashing, jelly rolls, cornerstones. In fact, the 2.5-inch strip die is our most popular die. Let's take a look. Now, the first thing you need to know is that strip dies are the first exception to that lengthwise grain rule. Remember how we talked about the lengthwise grain, high and tight is right? Because when you cut strips, do you cut lengthwise grain? No, you cut with the fabric, right? 2.5, 5, 7.5, and so forth. Now, this has open ends here on the blades. So there are only 4 blades here in this die. 1, 2, 3, 4. No blades down here and no blades down here. All right? Now these guidelines, I'll show you how to work those in just a minute. So what I'm going to tell you to do with your strip die is you want to measure from blade to outer blade, okay? So 2.5, 2.5, 2.5 is 7.5 inches. Add 1/4 inch on either side, and I'm going to tell you to just rough cut with the fabric 8 inches. All right, so now I've cut 8 inches width of fabric, and I've also cut off my selvage edge. How come? Yeah, you're going to cut it off anyway, so you might as well do it before you cut your strips. Now, I'm going to line up the fold of my fabric parallel to this black line. This black line tells me that's where the blades end. So I want to make sure I stop before the edge of the blades. And I'm going to come along here and feel in my die board and say, oh, here's the edges of the blades on this side. So make sure my fabric's in the middle of that. Also, quilters, you want to make sure that your fold is parallel. If it's at an angle like that, that's how you're going to cut those mountains in the middle and get those wonky strips. Okay? All right. So I'm going to lay it here. Now, if I had 6 layers of fabric on this die, I could cut enough binding for a queen size quilt in just one pass through the cutter. All right, so let's get our Go fabric cutter. Remember, you want to open it up so the handle is towards you. All right? So I've taken my die and my fabric and my cutting mat. If you try to cut without a mat, nothing happens. All right, turn the handle. Look how easy this is. Remember, you can cut dies in both directions. All right, here we go. Gonna give it a little love. Slide this mat, don't lift. Look at this. Now look, ta-da! I have perfect strips. And I don't have any mountains in the middle, right? Because I made sure my fabric was parallel to that line. All right, so I'm gonna move my cutter for just a second. And now I'm gonna show you how to cut squares and diamonds. So these angled guidelines right here, I'll move this over just a little bit. There we go. It says 90 degrees, 30, 45, and 60. So I'm going to cut some squares. So I'm going to start right here at 90 degrees, and I'm going to do what we call fan folding. So I'm going to go back and forth across the die board with my strip. Now the trick is that you want to make sure that your fold comes past the blades. So right where my fingernails are, that's where the blades are. Okay, make sure. Now some of you are going to say, oh, Pam, I could just cut those with my rotary cutter. Well, I'm going to tell you, you could start with a strip here, and then you could take your clear plastic ruler and line up the black line on the blade and do the same thing, where I can start right here. Make sure my fold comes past the blade, fan fold back and forth. I could go all the way down the die board and in one pass cut 126 squares. But I'm going to show you next how to cut diamonds. So you can either cut 30-degree diamonds, 45, or 60, whichever ones your pattern calls for. Today I'm going to cut some 60-degree diamonds. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start right here, make sure my fold comes past the blades, okay? And then again, if I had a ruler that had 60 degrees on it, I could go all the way down the die board. All right, so I'm going to put my cutting mat on top, and I'm going to use my Go cutter, and I'm going to cut the opposite direction. Look at this. It cuts both directions. Perfect. All right. Give it a little love. Slide that mat, don't lift. See how my pieces stick otherwise? And look, I have cut squares for days. And I've also cut perfect diamonds. Now, sometimes quilters ask me, is there a die for tumbling blocks? Well, I'm going to tell you, you can use your diamonds, cut them at 60 degrees, and there is your perfect tumbling blocks. So this is just a glimpse into the versatility of our die. Now we go over even more information in our Go Beyond the Basics class. We talk all about strip dies, and if you're interested, be sure and check out that class. Now let's take a look at some of the samples we have using our strip die. So I'm going to move my Go cutter because it's so lightweight and portable. All right, so this one is called Scrappy Rail Fence. We have a variety of strip dies starting from 1 inch all the way to 6.5 inches. And all but one of them have just a single size strip. But we have one die that cuts a 1, a 1.5, and a 2-inch strip, which is the die that we've used here. to create this festive scrappy rail fence quilt. Isn't that fun? Next, we have the Strip Star Sampler Quilt. Look at this. This is so stunning. So here's those diamonds that we cut perfectly at 60 degrees. And then here are the squares that we used from our strip die. Isn't this phenomenal? All right, quilters, finally, last but not least, you're going to get a die pick included in your Ready, Set, Go. All right? You're going to cut thousands of cuts with your dies over time, and tiny little threads will build up in your die. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your die pick. Notice, quilters, I have a little piece of painter's tape on mine. How come? Yeah, that's so I can find it, okay? And what you're going to do is you're just going to take your die pick and you're just going to pull out these little threads that gather here on the edge of your foam. And right here in the center, you're going to get little strings that build up as well. And then I take just a little lint roller brush and look at this. It's going to clean it perfectly. Now, I'm going to tell you that this will help your dies last even longer. And that's really the only maintenance that they need. I would recommend you cleaning your dies every 2 to 3 months, though it really depends on the die you've used and how often you have used it. The Ready, Set, Go is really such a great value with everything that you're getting. I mean, think about it. You're getting 9 dies, 2 cutting mats, a cutter, a die pick, and that amazing pattern book by the lovely Eleanor Burns. This is truly the best bang for your buck. All right, quilters, I have saved the best for last. Our final cutter starter set is our Go Big fabric cutter starter set. This is our electric version, and it's going to work perfectly for those folks who are making 8 to 10 or more quilts a year. Maybe you're doing charity quilts. This cutter also eliminates hand and arm strain, or maybe you have some other physical limitations. This is the cutter for you. This cutter also fits all of our Go dies, but there are a selection of dies that only fit in our Go Big. So here's what's included. This is our Go Big electric fabric cutter. It is 4 inches wider than our Go fabric cutter, so you could actually run 2 of our smaller dies through in one pass. It comes with the Flying Geese die and a 6x12 cutting mat and a pattern book to help you get started. All right, so let's talk about Flying Geese. And this is our Go Big fabric cutter, so watch, ready? Ta-da! You're gonna push the green button to turn it on. This is the die that comes with our Go Big. And this is Flying Geese. Okay, what is hard about Flying Geese? Yes, everything is hard, right? It's hard to get those points to get together at the top and the sides to be equal. So this die actually cuts the center quarter square triangle and the wings, which are half square triangles. Now, quilters ask me all the time, does it really matter if I'm cutting on the lengthwise grain, okay? So let me show you, okay? So I'm gonna cut half square triangles. So I'm gonna find that nice tight, there it is. High and tight is right, all right? And I'm just going to cut 2 layers. And remember, it's only gonna cut where there's fabric and a mat, so I'm actually gonna use my smaller mat. So this is the lengthwise grain. Now, I have a Go Big, so watch this. I can run it through this direction. Now, here's the question. Have I cut on the lengthwise grain? I haven't. Remember, this was the lengthwise grain. So the minute I turned it sideways, as the fabric went through, it stretched and pulled and cut and came back. And here's what happens. Okay? See right here, quilters? It doesn't come all the way to the edge of the blade. Yeah, so is that going to make a difference? You bet. If you're putting together, 200 half square triangles, they're not going to come together perfectly because you've cut them incorrectly. So lengthwise green matters. All right, let's move our Go Big and look at some samples of flying geese. All right, so first is our flyaway pillow pattern. You don't always have to make a quilt, you can make a pillow. And look, flying geese for days. It creates that chevron look. And I love the bright colors of this. Oh, look, and the back is solid. Look how cute that is. Next is our flying windmill table runner. So I'm going to fold it in half here so you can see the flying geese. Okay. Now, it's really easy to see the flying geese on the sides, and some of you are going to say, ooh, Pam, this isn't flying geese, but actually it is. Here's that big quarter square triangle, and then here's that half square triangle. So with flying geese, right, we would put one on this side, but actually we put two of those quarter square triangles together and built a completely different block. This is such a great example of how you can use our dies to create a variety of designs. All right, folks, you have learned so much already, so let's do a quick recap. First of all, you've learned all about our cutter starter sets. You've learned about cubes and companions. You've learned how to take care of your dies, and you've learned all sorts of things about strip dies. But what other dies do we offer? AccuQuilt offers a selection of block on board or bob dies, which means that all the shapes you need to make one block are on one die board. We do an entire class called First Date with Bob. So if you're interested in learning more about our bob dies, be sure to check out our class. Take a look at just a couple of samples we've made from a few of our bob dies. So the first is our Go Cross Canoes Throw Quilt. Oh, this is such a bright and beautiful block. And right here is our cross canoe block. So it comes with this kind of a kite shape, and then this tiny little triangle here in the corner to create a square. This would be such a difficult block to cut by hand. Next is Hattie's Choice Sparkle On Table Runner. So Hattie's Choice is this sweet little die that I love to use for smaller projects or table runners. It has 3 shapes on the die board: this diamond, these 2 triangles, and the kite shape. So you could put them together and to make this really fun table runner. And you could use this in a variety of different colors for all different kinds of seasons. Next is one of my favorite dies. This is Wonky Heart. So the Wonky Heart die comes on a 10 by 10 die board, so it's perfect for layer cakes. And what you're going to do is you're going to cut the shapes out and just shuffle all of the centers. So the outside is different than the centers. It's really a fun die and a great way to use layer cakes. Next are applique dies. Did you know that AccuQuilt has over 100 applique dies? This is the second exception to the lengthwise green rule, and I'm going to tell you why. When you applique and fuse your fabric prior to cutting. So once you fuse that fabric, you've stabilized it and no longer have to worry about the lengthwise grain. But because you added the fusible, you have to count that fusible as a half a layer of fabric. So you can only cut 4 layers of pre-fused cotton fabric. These are also the only dies that do not have that 1/4 inch seam allowance built in because they are designed for fusible applique. All of our non-licensed applique dies also come with free embroidery downloads from our AccuQuilt website. There are 3 different stitches: a blanket stitch, a satin stitch, and a motif stitch. This is one of my all-time favorite applique dies. It's called Talk to the Animals. All of the animals on our quilt were made with the owl die. And some of you are going to say, what? How did that work? So look here at our frog. Here's the owl body. Here are owl wings, and here's the owl eyes. This is such a great pattern, and again, a great way to use your applique shapes. Next is my favorite die that AccuQuilt ever made. It's the pickup truck die. This is called a truck for all seasons. So here's our pickup truck die. We used our 12-inch cube to make this really big background. And then we added different shapes for the season. So stars and flowers and pumpkins and trees, all right? And all of these have a free embroidery download. Now, do you not have an embroidery machine? No worries. We just did raw edge quilting along our shapes, and it looked perfectly fine. All right. We have gnomes for days. This is called Gnomes in the Castle. Look how fun this is. It's a really cute wall hanging. Again, we've used our cube to make the backgrounds. So here's an example of that satin stitch with our gnomes. Now, gnomes aren't just for Christmas. You could have spring gnomes and garden gnomes. You could have St. Patrick's Day gnomes and 4th of July gnomes. Think about outside the box. AccuQuilt also has a handful of project dies. This is our most recent die category, and these dies make creating multiple projects a snap. Now, while they're intended to make the project they are created for, we have seen so many different uses outside what they are intended for, and we actually touch on some of those in our Go Beyond the Basics class. So if you're interested, be sure and check out our class. Now, our current project dies are a baby bib, a Santa stocking, a burp cloth, a pin cushion, pennants, and the Go Big Bowl Cozy die. If you have a machine that has a handle, you cannot get that bowl cozy die. It's only built for our Go Big. Now, quilters, you have learned all about our different dies that we offer, and I know you have a wish list that you've started, and it's so long you're thinking, how am I going to store all of my dies? Well, first I'm going to remind you that you want to store your dies on the skinny edge, like books on a shelf. Now, it can be the long end or the short end, just so long as they're stored on their dies. Don't lay them flat, because if you stack one on top of the other, the weight of the dies on top are going to damage the blades on the dies on the bottom. But AccuQuilt also has amazing storage solutions to keep your dies safe and organized with our storage racks and storage boxes. The storage boxes are amazing because they mimic the cube storage, but then they also have this tiny little slot where you can label and write which dies are in your storage box. We also have storage racks to hold your long dies, like your strip dies or your log cabin dies. Now, last but not least are our accessories. AccuQuilt has rulers and rotary cutters and rotary cutting mats for subcutting, as well as these amazing rolling totes. They come in Go Green or Black, and they are perfect for the quilter on the go. Inside, you can fit your machines and dies, and the outside, that back zipper pouch can actually come unzipped, but that's where I store my strip dies and cutting mats. So I get this question all the time, which cutter is right for me? So let's talk about that for a minute. The first question you want to ask yourself is, how many quilts do you make? If you just make 1 or 2 or 3, that Go Me is the cutter for you. Now, maybe you're new to quilting and you want to make 3 to 8 quilts a year. The Ready, Set, Go is the perfect solution for you. If you're going to make 10 or more quilts, maybe you have some physical limitations, maybe you're doing charity quilts, then you want to think big and get the Go Big cutter. You also want to think about your space and how many quilts you're making or planning to make a year as part of your decision. Something else to think about is, what dies are you wanting? For example, do you want to make bowl cozies? Well, that die only fits in the Go Big. So sometimes the dies you want can also help you make your decision, as they will only fit in certain cutters. You can't go wrong with any of our cutters. Now, folks, I think that's it. You know everything there is to know about the AccuQuilt products. Oh wait, you need to see what's new. AccuQuilt is always coming out with new products every month, so let's take a look at what's new so far. Now, before I dive into what's new, I have to let you know that all of these products I'm about to discuss are excluded from any sales. All right, quilters, check out the Go Feather Star die. This beautiful die makes a 16-inch finished block. So it's going to work well with your 8-inch cube and your 4-inch cube. Now this die has an intricate pattern, and you might say to yourself, ooh, this might be really tough to put together, but because it has specialized dog ears and only 2 Y seams, it's gonna go together perfectly. So check out the Go Sparkling Star Throw Quilt. This particular pattern, we've used the feather star almost like a medallion quilt. So we've used a variety of strip dies along the edge to create this beautiful showcase for the feather star. And then the outer border, which kind of gives it a 3D look, was actually made with our cube. Next is the Go Icy Hot Stars wall hanging. And this one is really fun because you can see the 2 different colorways, even though they're just black and white and red, different colorways here. Again, beautiful, intricate design, really easy to put together because of those dog ears. You want to make sure that you can check out our Go Quilt program with this particular die, a great way to totally change up the colors and make the feather star in the colors you want. Quilters, the Go Weather Vane die makes a finished 8-inch block. So it's perfect to use with your 8-inch cube, but think about setting these blocks on point and using the Go 8-inch setting triangles. Now this die only has 4 shapes, so it can be mastered by any skill level. Here is a beautiful example of the Go Weather Vane. This is called the Go Weather Vane Baby Quilt. Okay, I love this quilt because it's a total stash buster, right? You could just use scraps from different colors and make your weather vanes completely different like this block. And again, look, just those 4 simple shapes. Now, some of you might think it needs a Y seam, but it doesn't. These shapes right here are actually created to make half square triangles sewn together to help you avoid that Y seam. Next up is the Go Monochromatic Weather Vane Throw Quilt. I love the beautiful spring colors of this, kind of those peaches and pinks. This is a perfect example of how you would want to use Go Quilt to change the colorway of your quilt. Maybe you want to make it for the holidays. Maybe you want to make winter with blues and whites. Maybe you want to make it spring colors. Any way you want to use it, you can use our Go Quilt. It's a free program available at AccuQuilt.com. Next up, quilters, are the Go Setting Triangles. The Go Setting Triangles come in 6 sizes to work with the 6 sizes of the cubes. 4-inch finished, 6, 8, 9, 10-inch finished, and 12-inch finished setting triangles. So this is a beautiful example of how we used our 4-inch cube. Look at this. This is that kite shape and those half rectangles. We used our 2.5-inch strip die to finish out 2-inch squares, and then we used our 4-inch setting triangles here for the sides and the corners. You want to make sure you check out setting triangles. It allows you to turn all of those blocks on point. Here's another example of our setting triangles. This actually is the pattern that comes on the packaging. Again, we've taken, it comes in all the different sizes, so 4 all the way up to 12 inches. This is the 8-inch block. So you can see how we've turned this block on point. We've used our cube. So here is our center square is shape number 1. This is shape number 4 here in the corners, half square triangles on the corners, squares on the end, and turned it on point. Then we took the setting triangles and actually created a new block to go in the center. So the thing I love about this is that we've created this star with the off color to match the stars in our center. So these are the new Go setting triangles. Next up is the Go Flamingo die. This super cute die has all of the shapes to make your flamingo. So the flamingo body, it cuts out the wing, the beak, and the eye. Quilters, think how difficult it would be to cut that shape by hand. Now this is a super cute small quilt. It's the Go Flamingo Party small quilt. And what we've done is we've used our 4-inch cube to make this center block. So not only do we need shapes 3 and 5 from the cube, we also need shape 1. And from that companion set angles, we need this great trapezoid shape. Now this is a perfect example of how you don't always have to use those embroidery files. This is raw edge quilting, and look how cute it is. All right, next we have this really fun project called Go Pretty in Pink. Isn't it stunning? Again, we've used our 4-inch cube to make the border. All right, our flamingo is actually 7.5 inches tall, so this is perfect because it makes an 8-inch block. This is a sample of the blanket stitch that we used. This is one of those free embroidery files, $21 value that we're going to give to you free. Now here's my pro tip. Notice that some of the flamingos are facing one way and some are facing the other. To create this look, on half of them you're going to have your fabric facing up, and the other you're going to have your fabric facing down. Remember, with all of our applique shapes, you can pre-fuse your cotton. You could use other fabrics for this as well, but you need to count that fusible as a half a layer of fabric. So if you're using cotton, you can only use 4 layers of pre-fused cotton. Quilters, we are thrilled to announce 2 new strip dies to add to our collection. First is the 2 3/4 inch strip die, which finishes at 2 1/4. This die works perfect with the 9-inch cube for sashing and squares. Next is the 6-inch strip die, which is perfect for borders and larger scale prints. Remember, strip dies are the most versatile Go dies. You can quickly cut long, continuous strips, squares, and even diamonds using the angled guidelines. Here's a sample of our new 2 3/4 inch strip. Notice we've paired it with our 9-inch cube. This pattern is called Go Lattice Throw Quilt. So right here is this quarter square triangle from the 9-inch cube, and here is that 2 3/4 inch strip. Doesn't this look beautiful? We've set that square on point, and it's just a fabulous quilt. Next, we have our Go Onward Throw Quilt. Now this one gives it a totally different look because we're just using those long strips. But again, we've used that 9-inch cube to make flying geese. Remember, every cube has flying geese. You just need shapes 4 and 5. Next up, quilters, we have the Go Pickle Dish die. This is a fabulous die, a block on board or a bob die. It makes a 10-inch finished block, so it works perfect with our 10-inch cube. Also, this is a real traditional block, but you can totally make it modern. The great thing about this die is that it has curved edges, but don't be scared of curves. We've added notches, specialized dog ears for that 1/4 inch seam allowance, and the die itself is screen printed for easy placement. So let's look at a couple of samples of our Go Pickle Dish die. This is called Go Burst of Sunshine. And the great thing about this particular quilt is that it only has 4 of the pickle dish blocks. And then we used our 10-inch mix and match cube and companion set angles to create this great block right here as the sashing. So this is triangle and a square, and this is square on point. I love the colors of this. It gives it a real modern look. It's just stunning. Next, we have this super fun quilt. It is called Go Mod Moo. So this was created for us. It's a very specific design. The pattern has this particular shape right here. It's called the modified A shape right here. So basically what you're going to do is create the pickle dish arch, and then from a template, cut this shape right here. This is super fun, a great way to use up your scraps. You could totally do it in browns if you wanted to create that look for the cow, but I do love the bright pinks. And this particular quilt only needs 3 of the pickle dish blocks. What a great die to bust up your scraps. All right, quilters, that's what's new. Hey, thanks for joining me today in our Cut Time Quilt More class, because at AccuQuilt we want to help you cut time so you can quilt more.